Welcome back to Crypto Brain. And today we're going to break down SPX that most traders completely overlook, because what you're seeing right now on this chart might look like a normal movement, but in reality there's a much deeper story developing behind the structure. So let's begin right here on the SPX chart. And immediately you can notice that price initially showed signs of strength where buyers were stepping in and attempting to build a base, and at this stage the structure looked relatively stable, which is exactly where most retail traders begin to gain confidence. However, in professional analysis, it's never about the first reaction, it's about whether the market can maintain that strength. And this is where things start to shift, because although we did see a reaction from support, the follow-through was not strong enough to create consistent higher lows. And that is your first warning sign that demand is present but not in control. Now, as price continues to move forward, what we begin to see is hesitation rather than continuation. And this is a key behavioral change, because in Astron bullish environment, price moves with clarity and momentum, whereas her movement becomes slower, less decisive and more reactive, which tells us that the market is losing strength. Now, if you focus carefully on this region, you can identify a reaction zone where price attempts to hold, but instead of expanding higher with conviction, we start to see weaker pushes and reduced momentum. And this is where control begins to shift, because once buyers fail to defend structure properly, sellers start to gain confidence, and that leads you into the most critical moment of this entire move, because instead of forming a higher low, the market breaks structure and creates a lower low. And this is extremely important because it confirms that we're no longer dealing with a strong bullish trend, but rather a transition phase where weakness is starting to dominate. Now, this is exactly the point where most traders get trapped, because they continue to look for upside without waiting for confirmation, whereas smart money simply observes and reacts to structure. And this is where we're bringing the next layer of analysis, which is the on-chain did. From CoinGlass, because when we combine price action with liquidity behavior, we get a much clearer picture of what is actually happening behind the scenes. And as you can see, the liquidity distribution is showing imbalance with clear areas where positions are likely to get taken out. And this tells us that the market is not moving randomly, it is moving with intent, targeting liquidity zones. And this further supports the idea that the move we're seeing is not yet complete, and there is still potential for continuation depending on how price reacts around these levels. No transitioning towards the website section. This is where we shift from pure technical behavior into perception and positioning. And as you can see, the project presents itself with clean branding, structured layout, and a clear attempt to build credibility, which is important because strong presentation creates confidence. However, and this is the key point, fundamentals and presentation do not always align with short-term price action, which means even if the project looks solid, the chart can still go through corrective phases. And that is exactly why we're on structure first and confirmation second now, bringing everything together. What we're looking at, there is a market that initially showed strength, but is now clearly displaying signs of structural weakness combined with liquidity targeting behavior. And unless price reclaims key levels with strong momentum, the probability still leans towards either further downside or continued consolidation rather than immediate expansion higher. And this is exactly why the correct approach here is patience rather than chasing, because in profession, all trading precisional ways beats speed. Now, as we move into the final confirmation phase and revisit the website, the objective here is not analysis but conviction, because this is where the viewer forms their final judgment, and the message is simple: if structure is reclaimed with strength, then that becomes your confirmation for a potential shift. However, if price continues to respect resistance and fails to move back above, then this move is very likely not finished yet, and that is where discipline becomes your edge, because while most traders react to motion, your main focused on behavior, structure and confirmation. And that is what separates a professional from the majority. And if you found this breakdown valuable and you want more structured non-noise analysis like this, make sure you subscribe to Crypto Brain, because here we focus purely on real market behaviors, marked money concepts, and high probability setups. So I'll see you in the next one.